Greetings, as I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome once more. We're diving back into the Pathfinder world, to Golarion once more, and we're continuing our global tour to Jalmeray today. So, everybody out there, welcome to you. Of course, you're joining me live on Twitch. Say hi over there. If you're joining me later on YouTube, remember to like, ring the bell, and subscribe and all that stuff. How many of you had an adventure in Jalmeray today? Because Jalmeray has had some adventures and things set around it, so certainly you could have possibly had your adventures today. That's my question for you down in the comments below. But let's begin our tour of Jalmeray, learn all about it today. And of course, where's the great place to start? My sources and places that you might want to look deep into it. Other than, I honestly do recommend the Pathfinder Wikipedia. It's a pretty good source there. It's not always the perfect source there, so oftentimes you do have to do additional research beyond there, but it will give you a good start. I used a lot of it there. But the campaign setting book, the Inner Sea World Guide, both introducing it, Impossible Lands, which focused on it to a good degree for 2nd edition, and there you go. The first 2 edition books that you can look into, and a 2nd edition book that will honestly give you a lot of great things. The Impossible Lands is the one that's the most up-to-date I would recommend for checking this out. So there's the symbol of Jalmeray. It's an island nation. It's in the Obari Ocean. It's off the coast of Nex. And for about 2,000 years, it's been ruled by Vudra nobles at the westernmost of lands so-called Impossible Kingdoms. Vudran nobles. Of course, Vudra is a kingdom, the Impossible Kingdoms of Vudra, so it's connected to that, hence why it's a kingdom of the impossible, and it's kind of part of the Impossible Kingdoms, but not, that's a complexity we'll talk about here as we dive into it. So we don't really know a lot about this island before it was claimed by Nex, actually, the Archmage, in 2053 AR. So this is already within the past a lot of time. We don't even know what was happening in things like the Age of Darkness and stuff like that, and any of the times after that. And there's little written on the island except that it was a place of incredible natural beauty. So yeah, it was a very nice place. There was the indigenous people that did live here, the Sanghiri people, that actually inhabited the island at the time that Nexians took over. But they were never consulted about Nex's claims, and basically there was a bunch of genocidal acts of the exiled archlords of Nex that would only leave a diaspora of Sangari culture to return thousands of years later. So, unfortunately, the Sangari people have really suffered a lot. They were basically sent off the island, and it's the modern Sangari as we know it have only recently returned to the island nation from being basically sent to Vudra. So yeah, those that remained were, the Archlords just killed them off. Kind of awful, unfortunately. So it's nice that their people weren't completely destroyed, and they've managed to regain some of their ancestral connections to their people, but yeah, no, Nex is not a great place. We've talked about that. So we get to 563, and the legendary Maharaja of Vudra, Kibin Sald, visited the Inner Sea region in a head of a fleet of 101 Vudran ships. Kibin Sald's first port of call was the Nexian capital of Quantinium, and in short order he became a firm favorite of Nex's court. At the time, hardly anyone in Avastir Grun had ever seen in Vudrani before. So this is an important part, and this is a time period where the world is not so interconnected, so Vudrani people really hadn't been seen. The Maharaja and his expansive entourage overstayed their welcome Nexus course, causing the Archmage to view him as an expensive burden and possible threat to his own ambitions. To diplomatically resolve the conflict, basically Nex granted Kibin Sald domain over the island of Jalmeray, and for a decade, Kibin Sald and his traveling court erected temples and monuments in the island using bound genies to help in their construction. Vudran culture, especially its art and dress, made a lasting impression on that of Nex during the time of Vudran merchants, prophets, and explorers arriving in growing numbers. Neither Nex or Kibin Sald consulted the Sangari about their claims, though Kaiban Sald was intrigued by them. He gave them an option: serve him or leave. Most accepted his gifts, but many chose exile, relocating the nearby islands of Kaina, Katakhan to retain their freedom. The Maharaja largely left them in peace there, but treated the island as his personal preserve of exotic natives, basically. So it was still pretty awful. Some chose to stay. Now we get the Archlords, which I mentioned, which did very bad things. So after staying for a decade, Kaiban Sald and his considerable entourage departed Jalmeray in 573, leaving behind the buildings, monuments, bound genies. Some of the Sunghari people also joined Kaiban Sald and traveled to Vudra. Shortly thereafter, in 576, Nyx vanished. Nyx's disappearance led to infighting in his realm, which triggered the next migration to the island. One of the factions that was vying for leadership was in the Ruthless Nations were the Archlords. After centuries of conflict, they failed and were forced into exile in 2279. Many of the Archlords chose Jalmeray as their new home, settling on the beautiful island. They hoped to be able to influence events in the nearby homeland, and either tried to modify the wonders left behind by Kaiban Sald, or more often than not, simply sealed them up and ignored them. The Archlords were really not charitable to the indigenous people on the island, or that of the island of Kaina Kataka. They considered them trespassers and wiped them out with magic, reducing the small islands to ash and rubble. Basically, only those that went to Vudra with the Maharaja were able to carry on their culture, unfortunately for them. During this time, Jalmeray also repulsed an attack from Quadria. So, hey, new people taking over Quadria was a great time to take over. So, when we get to 2822, about 600 years later, a little less than that, Vudrani Rajas returned, their exotic ships carrying a large number at the ports of Niswana on Jalmeray's western coast. The Vudrani who arrived claimed to be the descendants of the legendary Maharaja Kaiban Sald, and despite the improbability of this, it had been over 2,000 years since Kaiban Sald had visited. These Rajas produced legitimate genealogies to support their claims. Surprised at the become of the island and the strange people they found occupying it, at least their perspective, the Vudrani basically politely asked the Archlords to vacate the island. When they refused, they resorted to drastic measures. And an army of bound genies destroyed all but one of the Archlords' ships and ejected the interlopers. Along with Ashawar Lancers, the Vudrani summoned an army of Vehadans, genies with power over elemental water, who battered the island with storms, sank all but one of their boats. Afterwards, the Archlords abandoned Jalmeray to the Vudrani and set about opening the sealed monuments and reviving the Guardians. The Vudrani did. Jalmeray has remained under the direct control of these people's descendants ever since. And aside from another ill-conceived attack from Quadria, it's remained a very peaceful nation since that time. A homesick group of Sunghari people returned from Vudra, with many settling in Nishuan while pleading the case of the island's government for its lands to return to them. They've also explored whether Kaina Katari could be reclaimed, but the Nexian damage is pretty great. The spells they used to wipe out their cousins were pretty awful, unfortunately. Let's talk about the island and then the cities. And this is a image of Niswan's, one of their markets. So, it's an island nation. The warm waters of the Obari Ocean surround it, and it allows its inhabitants to maintain its kind of unique culture. The curve of the island itself is about 175 miles across at its westernmost to easternmost points, and 223 miles in length from northernmost to southernmost. Bagia Bay fills the western side of the island. It was historically a place of incredible natural beauty, and it was only enhanced by a vast array of elemental creatures bought by the Vudrani to help shape the island to their needs. It's renowned across Golarion for its splendor. Sites reproduced nowhere else, except perhaps in Vudra itself. Much of it remains intentionally underdeveloped, actually. It has one major river, the River Sald. Coughing there. Which drains from its center interior to Baiga Bay. Its rainy season floods are held back by a system of dikes. Fields of rice line its northern shore, and the dusty Raji fields and their elephant and horse ranches span the southern shores. Temples to a wide variety of locally and distantly worshipped deities line the river. At the river's head, there's also the highest point, stands the pure temple of the Maharaja. The foreign Sengan jungle covers most of the island's southwestern peninsula, and the dense Gansai jungle, the island's northwestern coast, extends as mangroves to the ocean and has home to large sea creatures. The climate widely varies from its different areas, a consequence of the elemental creatures that live there. It's beset by cold winds and sometimes even snow, while the northern tip of it is covered in verdant mountainous jungles. It's vulnerable to power storms and occasional hurricanes from the Obari Ocean, but the island's genies are able to reduce their strength. Most of the storms do avoid direct landfall, and a few that strike can cause widespread devastation. Plants and animals imported from Vudra compete with the island's natural flora and fauna. The southern Sengal jungle was replanted and repopulated with life by Vudra, thanks to an individual Korani Than Yuavi, whose dedicated balance has been carefully maintained since. The northern Gansai jungles host dangerous snakes, crocodiles, insects. Reclusive Athamaris, introduced by Phaedons, repel many waterborne predators. Again, Athamaru, or the Athamaris, are the new name for Lachelis in the old edition. So if you're unfamiliar with that, that's what they are now. Just, new name for them. The borders of the nation of Jalmeray do extend to a number of smaller adjacent islands. Cursed Govela off the northern coast, and Criminal Haven Videsha, Artistic Grand Suret, the haunted Katrina Karata around Baiga Bay to the west. As for their cities, we'll finish up with their capital, but we'll hit up all the smaller places. There's Lakumgi, a small village on southern Jalmeray, on the eastern edge of the Sengal jungle. It's a bunch of huts on stilts to keep out snakes, other creatures, and stuff like that. So, yep, small village that we know about. Pataskar was once known as Shimmering Jewel of Jalmeray. It was a city famous for both pleasures and arcane learnings. The Archlords of Nex found a nameless horror in the vaults between old Pataskar, and the city is reduced to a community of farmers and fisherfolk from them. The city rings the ancient ruins surrounding but never entering them. Whatever awful things the Archlords released still roams the dark depths below Pataskar. So, yeah, there was something there. They unleashed it. It's become a cursed place. Unfortunate. There's also Prada Hanam, a port city on the eastern coast of Jalmeray. Its defining feature is the Murmur Dome of Prada Ham, an enormous multi-building structure that suddenly appeared in the town centuries ago. Yeah, just appeared. The dome is what made it something to check out. And of course, then we have the capital, Niswan. The city of pagodas, it's also known as. A very large city. It's a port city. It's got many tiered city of pagodas of renowned beauty. Every building supports colorful silk banners that flutter in the cold ocean winds. Red stone streets crisscross the hillsides. It's a meeting place for travelers, scholars from all over Golarion, offers sights to be seen nowhere in the region. Here, gold-draped eunuchs walk the streets, Vudran princes often offering strange tribute to statues of God. Utterly unknown in this region, they're from Vudra, of course. It's renowned for its center of religious learning. A high holy district is home to scholars and gurus, renowned as some of the wisest people on the face of Golarion. It's also dotted with numerous shrines, temples, and statues dedicated to hundreds of deities of the Vudran pantheon. Its districts are Thakor's Palace, the Heights, Cliff Fisher's Dwellings, High Holy District, Grand Chronicler's Circle, Mayor Ram Ward, the House of Perfection, Commerce District, Harbor District, Terraces, Sukapur, Low Caste Districts. It has 4 springs which feed canals that go throughout the city. Water's plentiful here. In spring, the High Holy Districts are considered to be sacred, and most citizens bathe at least once a year. So there's a little bit of information on the capital of Jalmeray. You can go to depths if you want to look into all that rest of your stuff yourself, of course. Let's talk about who's in charge of Jalmeray. People in charge. I'll talk about this a little bit more. So in theory, Jalmeray is ruled by the undisputed monarch Karsawan, the Thakor of Jalmeray in practice. However, the Thakor's power is limited as far as the voice can carry. The country is actually ruled by the noble families, powerful mystics, and mighty masters of the island's monasteries, known as Mayora Ram. These influential people oversee the day-to-day running of the country, while the Thakor tends to spend his days writing poetry, attending to his harem of wives, and advising and pitting his advisors against one another to prevent any one of them becoming too powerful. And except for a number of invasions that have been unsuccessful by Quadria, Jalmeray is generally peaceful. Even to places like Geb and Kapatesh, who are very notorious. The Apsis Contorium has tried to expand its trade into Jalmeray lately. And Thakor has heard the Singari requests for the island to be returned to them, but suggests that fulfilling such a request is now impossible. However, the Thakor has worked to help the Singari people maintain and strengthen their culture as a first step toward attempting them to right the historical wrongs inflicted on them. So it is important to note that though the Singari people have seen a lot of problems, at very least the person who is, on paper, rules the nation is attempting to have them rekindle their culture. And, you know, it's not a lot, but it's something. It's sort of like the island has been long since settled by a lot of other people. Really giving it back is kind of hard at this point in time, but we can maybe try to do something. They try to do their best. It's a tough thing. The prime port, of course, is Niswan in the western Bigai Bay. Jalmeray produces a lot of trade goods. Despite its size, in the Verdant Islands, various climates allow it to export a wide variety of mundane trade goods. Lumber, gemstones, spices, salts, textiles, seafoods. It produces armors, weapons, books, literatures, magic items, luxury good like jewelry and artwork. It's also a place of shipbuilders. It's an island, you know, so it's got a lot of things going for it economically. Now, we can talk a little bit more about who all lives here, and we'll show off, to go along with that martial arts here, we're going to show off the House of Perfection. This is the Monastery of Unblinking Frames, one of Jalmeray's House of Perfection. We'll talk about it. It's related to martial arts in this area, and monastic orders. So if you want to know a little bit about Vudra, Jalmeray gives you an idea about the life in Vudra. It's one of the only places in the Undersea region where humans of Vudrani descent are the majority, and Vudrani is the dominant language. In addition to Nisawan, it's, you know, I've talked about its other settlements. Travelers enticed by visions of wonder come here, are warmly embraced by its friendly and accommodating cultures, establishing the island as a favorite destination of those with the means and ability to undertake the voyage. Basically, if you've got a lot of money, it's a great tourist destination. Of course, we do have, you know, the revived Sungari presences here as a people. So you will actually see Sungari events and festivals pretty commonplace. Sungari traders operate in some of the city's successful fisheries and markets and waterfront taverns, and are leaders of its leaders are vocal members of commerce and government operations. So again, though they can't get their island back, you know, they are getting their culture being celebrated in a lot of places here and coming back, and, you know, it's the first step towards something of coming back to them, and who knows what the future can have. Then there are other people here too, not just the Vudrani, not just the Hiri. There's a wide variety of individuals from many far-flung places. There's ancient genies, elemental entities that are entrusted with safeguarding the cities and nurturing the natural magnificence of the nations, and they continue to grace the island. Coexistence between humans and genies here have given rise to a substantial population of geniekin, who bear the essence of their elemental in lineage. Garudas and Nagas send forth emissaries to Jalmeray's sovereignty, while Rakshasas and Asuras clandestinely reside in the city, luring the devout into temptation and ruin. It's also home to many Cambions, most of which are Rakshasa descent, also known as Beast Brood, and some have descended from Ashura, commonly known as Fault Spawn, and a few from Div, commonly known as Spite Spawn. Jalmeray Cambions are treated as an underclass of untouchable, forced to work in jobs mostly considered beneath them, such as cleaning sewage. They're viewed as unclean, and most Jalmeray humans do not eat food that's been touched by Cambions. The luckiest of the Cambions disguise themselves with magic provided by their Phineas progenitors to kind of hide. There's also numerous Oskashadki catfolk that roam Jalmeray, the Amarons, making a living as wandering traders and often congregate in roving caravans. Warriors of the caravan take it upon themselves to hunt down any creature that prey upon the people of Jalmeray, including tigers and Rakshasas in particular. Unfortunately, due to their striped fur and fondness for expensive jewelry, the Akashati Amors are often mistaken for the tiger-headed Raj Rakshasa. To avoid this, Akashadi Aked Haki, I'm saying it wrong, Askedhaki often incorporate holy symbols and blessed items in their outfit, as these objects are anathema to any Rakshasa. Despite the myriad of wonders in Jalmeray, the nation bears its own share of burdens that weigh heavily on the people. In a realm where the extraordinary is part of the everyday, citizens frequently find themselves ensnared by equally extraordinary curses. Those unable to free from the malevolent enchantments often have recourse to seek solace in a secluded and ostracized islands situated to the north of Jalmeray's shore. So the religion that dominates Jalmeray is unique to the Inner Sea. Already has many worshippers across the region. The religion is at its strongest on the island, along with the worship of thousands of other deities of Vudra. River Salt is said to be the crust of birthing the island's first own deity, whereas rice farmers have begun to worship a young farmer who appears in their dreams. So they might be getting a deity of the river there. The best-known Jalmeray holidays are Amati Upastuti, celebrated in Lamashin, which marks the founding of Jalmeray as a Vudran colony. Let's talk about martial arts! We got this image here, let's talk about it. So, the inhabitants of Jalmeray include an unusually high number of monks, and the island is said to be host dozens of monastic orders. The prowess of the martial artists is renowned across the continent, and 3 houses of perfection, the Monastery of the Untwisting Iron, Monastery of the Unfolding Wind, and this one shown here, the Monastery of the Unblinking Flame, are the most sought-after monasteries for teaching martial arts in the Inner Sea region. To qualify for training at one of the houses of perfection, potential applicants must complete daunting entrance trials, such as racing a Jathum, that is swift as the wind. That's a type of genie. Wrestling a stony Jabali, or outwitting the cunning Ifrit. Many fail to pass the rigorous tests, but still show potential, can find training at one of the lesser centers of martial learning on the island, while those who show no aptitude for the martial arts are politely asked to leave the country. Once, after which they're forced to leave. A few who are accepted are pushed to develop physical perfection combined with mental and spiritual balance as an unusual form of magic gleaned from the open mind. Members of the 3 Grace monasteries are renowned and respected throughout the Inner Sea, even though not fully understood or trusted. Parents of wealth and power from across the region sometimes send their children to Jalmeray to train by martial arts masters. These students often form strong bonds with the people of the island nation that transcends worldly concerns of their parents. The monks of these monasteries compete with one another in a tournament held once every decade, known for grueling challenges called the Challenge of Sky and Heaven. The core Karasawan, along with the extensive council of advisors called Mayoram, actively support various competitions, including the esteemed Solemn Sky Duel of the Masters. This renowned event attracts skilled combatants not only from the Inner Sea region, but across all corners of the globe. There's also learning here to finish up for today. It has amassed an unmeasurable wealth through trade. It's a great trade center. And its true renown is through its realm of knowledge and philosophy. Academia seemingly intertwines with religion, and temples serving as sanctuaries of learning and libraries housing exquisite illustrated copies of sacred texts. Countless signs dedicated to a vast variety of deities offer written wisdom on diverse paths of spiritual enlightenment. With Jalmeray's cities, one can find prestigious schools catering to every discipline and profession, be it magic, poetry, political intrigue, or the art of seduction. But there you go. There is Jalmeray. It's an incredibly interesting nation. And certainly... Oh, I didn't turn that one off. Certainly one that is very rich with opportunities for adventure. Certainly you could go there for a martial arts competition, or you could go there to learn something, or you could be dealing with various people that are there, various religions, individuals that are there. There's the, things going on with the Campions, Rakshasas, Ashuras. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Jalmeray that, yes, on the surface, it's a very peaceful place, but it's ripe with adventure and things from the old, archlords that could be left over there, or things from even older, from the Kaiban Sald era. Plenty of old ruins that are there. Connections to, of course, the Sangari people that were on the island. So much good adventuring opportunities, but also a lot of good storytelling. It's an interesting nation where, yeah, there isn't technically a person in charge, the Thakar, but again, they're not really in charge. It's really just the merchants, nobles, and powerful people that are kind of in charge of the nation and have it keep going. And yeah, some pretty awful things have happened on Jalmeray. And yes, certainly speaking, there is attempts to fix this. The Sangari have suffered greatly, but their people, their culture exists heavily within Jalmeray, and we find this meeting of Sangari and Vudrani culture at the heart of what Jalmeray is. And though they aren't necessarily the same thing, and they aren't necessarily going to intermingle, they get along because they allow themselves to get along and develop into this interesting nation of the world. Jalmeray is connected with the world, and certainly maybe isn't as great as some of the other large major cities and ports in various places, but it does find itself a place that has a cultural connection to many places. So it is another melting pot of cultures that exists, and brings that to a lot of nearby places, with its connections to Vudra and places on Garund, or either deeper into the Inner Sea, meaning that there's cultural mixing and meeting that is spreading, and means that it is becoming and helping Golarion becoming a more global place, which is honestly for the best usually, because then we got a lot more interesting ideas, and the effective renaissance of Golarion are being driven by places like here. But that'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed talking with Jalmeray. We're going to discuss more nations in the future, more ancestries is what I've been doing on this. But if you want to check me out live on Twitch and you want to join me, that's Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, with Saturdays a backup day if I miss any of those days. Everything goes up on YouTube. I have my discussion show, discussing tabletop, Saturdays at 6 p.m. Talk about news of the week. We dive deep into topics related to tabletop. And I have a live play of Pathfinder, first edition, on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. EST. So make sure to check that out. Crimson Queen. Of course, all the tabletop stuff goes up on YouTube. I do have other stream stuff up on Twitch if you just want to see gaming and chatting and stuff like that. But yeah. Social media link below, Discord and Twitter.com. And that's about it. So everybody out there, I always hope you enjoy learning about these places, visiting these nations, diving deep into them. I enjoy talking about them and teaching you about them. And honestly speaking, researching them too. Looking up and, finding out books and sources and reading up on them and seeing if there's any other details that would be great to add in, or, what. Again, the most of the Pathfinder wiki pages are pretty good at giving a basic summary of most of these places, but sometimes you really have to bring in some stuff from some other sources. And I tried my best to get enough there that you got a good idea. You can always dive in deeper. Anyway. Till the next time we chat about another topic, dive into anything, talk about tabletop, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.